So we start here the recording. So last time when I did the recording was only recorded my voice. It was not your voice. I have no idea why. I hope this time will be this time will work. So welcome everybody to our today history Zoom meeting, Zoom tour. My name is Tomek, and I will do this in English, and my friend Fumiko will translate in Japanese. So thank you first, Fumiko, for translating that, and also welcome to everybody on YouTube. Is there somebody? I'm wondering which language you hear in YouTube, to be honest, if it's Japanese or if it's English. I don't know. We will see. We will see. And yeah. So for everybody who's the first time here, again, my name is Tomek. I live in Germany, in Berlin, in the capital, and I do history sightseeing tours in Berlin, in Europe, mostly Germany, Poland, Czech. So if you want to come to visit, you're very welcome. Or if you can't come, you're here, and that's a good thing. I focus on the history of Jehovah's Witnesses. That's my focus during the persecution of Jehovah's Witnesses, during the Nazi time, during the communist time in the last 100 years. I do this on Zoom, and also everything is also on YouTube. And just before we start, I just want to show you for a second my website. That's my website, history of jw.tours, history of jw.tours, and you got all the information that you need if you want to come to Germany, or else if you want to write me a message, you can do it here. But I don't speak Japanese, so if you want to write a Japanese message, please write to Fumiko. But if you write English, you can write me. And if you click here on online tours, there you have also the YouTube link or the calendar of my next tours in English, and sometimes, like today, in Japanese translation. So this is for February, and soon will be also the calendar for March. So that's very easy. History of jw.tours, but more information also later. This tour will be about 1.5 hours. And after that, if you want, you're very welcome to ask questions in Japanese, in English. Fumiko will translate also these questions, and I hope I can answer also these all your questions. Okay, so one also very important thing that I want to say, yes, we will talk about the Nazi time. So it's a very brutal time in human history, especially in German history. Yes, we will talk today also about death, because the stories that I will tell today, so I will tell you today stories about mostly young men, but there's also a woman in this story, but mostly young men who refused to join the Nazi army, the German army. And that's why they are persecuted or even killed. But even we talk about death, I will not focus on the horrible stories. I will tell you the story of that person. I will tell you the story of the place they lived. So you get a little bit to know about Berlin. And the goal is to show that these men and women are men who were fighting against the Nazis. So please don't be afraid about horror stories, no horror stories or stuff like that. And you're always welcome to invite friends, families, coworkers, whoever is interested in that information is free to come, or also to watch that on YouTube. So let's start the video. And during the video, I will talk. Sometimes I record it myself. Yeah, but you will see. You will see what's going on.
hat heute Nacht zum ersten Mal auf unserem eigenen Territorium auch mit bereits regulären Soldaten geschossen. Seit 5:45 Uhr wird jetzt zurückgeschossen.
Engländer behaupten, das deutsche Volk wehrt sich gegen die totalen Kriegsmaßnahmen der Regierung. Es will nicht den totalen Krieg, sagen die Engländer, sondern die Kapitulation. Wollt ihr den totalen Krieg? Wollen wir ihn, wenn nötig, totaler und radikaler, als wir ihn für uns heute überhaupt erst vorstellen können?
So I'm sure that Fumiko did not translate it, what this man, Joseph Goebbels, was shouting. And it's not also important in that case. I just wanted to show you the feeling, how these people were following crazy men, warmongers, people who Goebbels is asking, do you want a total war? Well, he's not asking, he's commanding, right? And the people are following. They are following, yes, we want a total war. But we would not talk about them. We will talk about these names here. These stones that you can see here are remembering Jehovah's Witnesses. We have stones, we will talk about this later, for every person who is persecuted. But today, we talk only about Jehovah's Witnesses, and that's only in Berlin. There are more in whole Europe, but these are stones remembering only Jehovah's Witnesses here in Berlin. But the question is, what are these stumbling stones, or as in German is Stolpersteine? And for that, I want to show you a video from a museum in Canada who was talking about that.
I was walking down a street in Berlin when I first stumbled on the stumbling stone.
The English translation of the Stolperstein is stumblestone, because you stumble upon it when you walk.
It catches your eye, particularly in the sunlight, because it reflects from the ground. When you go closer to it and you try to understand, first of all, what are you looking at?
The Stolperstein have been placed mainly for Jewish people who lived in Europe and who were murdered during the war in the concentration camps, in their memory, with their date of birth, with their name, and where they were murdered, as a memory for people to learn from and not to be forgotten that they were part of the communities where they lived in.
Liberation 75 is a global movement to commemorate this important anniversary of 75 years since the end of the Holocaust. The goal is to ensure that the memory of the Holocaust is not lost in the future. We're at such an important point in time. We're now 75 years later. We're losing all of our witnesses, the Holocaust survivors themselves, who continue to tell their stories. The Stumbling Stone exhibition is being showcased in Canada for the first time, sponsored by the German Consulate, Toronto. It is important because many people will finally be able to see this phenomenal project where inscribed brass stones are placed right into the street, directly in front of the last freely chosen homes of victims of the Holocaust. Each stone begins with the words, "Here lived," followed by the victim's name, date of birth, and fate, which in the vast majority of cases was deportation and murder. It is a deeply personal monument to an individual tragedy.
The Stolperstein, to me, represents a grave because my parents were murdered in Sobibor, so there is absolutely no grave of my parents. But the Stolperstein is the first tangible object that you see that was of theirs.
It reminds me of my family that was murdered in the Holocaust. And the Stolperstein, to me, would mean that that family still, in some ways, in memory, lives at that place and had a life in that place at that time. Even though there are 70,000 stumbling stones placed in more than 1,200 cities and towns across Europe and Russia, each one tells the story of an individual who had a home and lived a life just like we do.
I think because this was very fast, I think it's good if I just explain in short version, right? What the video was saying. Is that okay, Fumiko? Yeah. Yeah. So so this movie, this video was 5 years ago. There was an exhibition in Canada about the stumbling stones, and they were talking about this exhibition. What is a stumbling stone? It's a project made by a German artist. His name is Günther Demning. And he had the idea to remember these people where they lived. So it's not a memorial like, I don't know, it's good that we have this, but like one memorial for all Jews in one place. We have this in Berlin, of course. But his idea is that where these people lived, had a normal life in a house, in a block, in an apartment, whatever. And when they were taken away from that house, apartment, by the Nazis to prison, to concentration camp, in front of that house, he puts this stone on the ground and writes down the informations. Name, when they were born, why they were persecuted, and what happened to them. Did they survive or were they killed? So as you can see on this map, you have here some numbers. So when you walk through Berlin, when you walk through Germany, Poland, a lot of European countries, and you're just walking, then you sometimes see, oh, this stone is different. It's not a normal stone in the ground. No, this stone is golden. It shines like golden. And then you stop, and then you read the names, and then you know, oh, here in that building lived Mr. So-and-so, and he was 20 years old when the Nazis took him to prison, and he survived or he died. And right now there are close to 100,000 stones in whole Europe. And I'm a huge fan of that project. I'm a really huge fan. I think it's a great idea to remember these people because you have to stop. And when you want to read, you have to bow, right? You have to go down and to bow. And yeah, there are stones for mostly Jewish people, but there are stones for Sinti and Roma. The other word that we don't use is gypsies. There are stones for communists. There are stones for criminals. There are for every person that was persecuted. And also, of course, there are stones for Jehovah's Witnesses. So that was the video that we just watched. And you can see, we will follow from number 1 to number 2, 3, 4, until 17. We will follow these stones and hear the story of each of these persons, of each one of them. And I also will tell you a little bit about the area where these people lived. Why? My goal is to make it personal, to see that person, that man, that woman, that boy behind the stone, to get a feeling these were normal people having a life, talking to people about the Bible. But the Nazis hated them. So let's start. Thank you, Fumiko, for translating until now. This was, yeah, not really well prepared by me. So now we go by script. So we have now more stones. We got some new ones, and we will get more and more stones in the future. And let's visit number 1. The numbers is also by me. It doesn't mean it's the first stone that was made, right? It's just that I did. So here we can read that there lived Paul Kuchenbecker. He was born in 1901, and he was, yeah, what I'm talking about. Yeah, you have to listen what I'm saying. Yeah, what we know about the stone. Sorry.
We are here at the stumbling stone of Paul Kuchenbecker at the Osloer Straße number 7 in Berlin, Gesundbrunnen. Paul Kuchenbecker was born 1909 in Berenwalde, Silesia, former Poland. He moved to Berlin and got a lot of different jobs here. In the year 1925, he got out of the Protestant church in Berlin and became a Jehovah's Witness. In 1943, he was called to join the Nazi army to serve with a gun in the war. He refused. It was against his Christian conscience. So unfortunately, Paul Kuchenbecker was sent to prison in Brandenburg, and in November 1943 he was murdered, executed at the prison in Halle, Saale.
So that's all that we know about Paul Kuchenbecker, that he was 42 years old when he was murdered by the Nazis. Here you can read in big letters, right? Zeuge Jehovah's, witness of Jehovah, so yeah, Jehovah's Witness. He refused to join the army. This is the next sentence, Wehrdienst verweigert. He was arrested and then executed 5th of November 1943 in this prison, Zuchthaus Halle, Saale. And that's all I know. We don't have more information about Paul. Unfortunately, maybe we will get more information soon in the future. The place where Paul lived was called Gesundbrunnen. And it's because there was a spring, a mineral spring, because it means healthy spring, the word Gesundbrunnen. And the area became popular for workers. There was the the working class district, and it's until today. And in that area lived a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses. But the park here, it's called the Humboldt-Hain Urban Park, there were two large flag towers. So these are huge machines to fight against planes when the bombers came. So in that area had these, and still you can visit today. You can still visit this. One of the biggest kingdom halls of Jehovah's Witnesses is just 2 minutes away from that place. So this is where Paul lived. You can still see this. In the background, you see the famous TV tower of Berlin. Normal working class district back then and today. This sentence will be after every person. So we always, my idea is, this will be always the same sentence after every person to think a few seconds about that person. Let's go to the next ones. Here we have only what's written there. Otto Reiche, he was born in the year 1894, also refused the army, arrested 1944 and executed 1944 in the same prison that Paul was. So Otto Reiche was 50 years old when the Nazis killed him. But we know a little bit more about Wilhelm. I forget also to tell you that you will see that every stone my wife cleaned. So this is my wife. So when we visited each stone, we also cleaned them to make them shiny again, because of course people walking, so it's get dirty. But yeah, it's very easy to clean them and make them looking good again.
We're here at the Erich Weinert Street 132. Here in that house that was formerly number 53 of the Carmen Silver Street lived Wilhelm Wojciechowski. As an active Jehovah's Witness, he refused to join the army of the Nazis. And that was the reason why he was taken to prison, arrested by this government in the year 1942 into the prison of Plötzensee. On the 12th of November 1942, the Nazi government sentenced him to death. And on the 26th of November the same year, Wilhelm Wojciechowski was murdered by the Nazi government. He was just 19 years old.
So the place, it's still the same, right? Very close. This working class. His father, Willie, he suffered because there was a colleague who was spying on him. That colleague was a very loyal spy to the Nazis. So the father had a nervous breakdown, and died in 1933. William was at that time just 10 years old. And his mom, who survived, she wrote in a letter that I will read this. During his apprenticeship as a precision mechanic on April 15, 1942, my son was called up for military service. Because of his political views, he refused to take the oath on Adolf Hitler and to serve in the military against other nations. He loved peace and couldn't kill innocent people. So when he was 19 years old, this is what he wrote to his mom. This is his farewell letter dated November 25, 1942. My dearest mother, my beloved little sister, please don't be frightened. Please don't be sad. Please don't cry. Please don't let the pain overwhelm you. I am now writing the last lines to you, my dearest, in the last few hours that I am still on this earth. And know that I die upright and brave. It is done by guillotine. I have prayed so much since I've been here that I haven't cried a tear, even now. It seemed to me sometimes, but prayer quickly gave me strength again, just as it is now. I'm taken to this cell right after supper. I will stay on this earth until 3 minutes past 5. Then all suffering and gloom will come to an end. It loves you from the heart, Wilhelm Wojcicki. We go to the next stone. Also here, I have only information what it's written on the stone, so I'm still investigating. What do we hear? What do we know? We read the name Erich Hermann. Also again written Jehovah's Witness, refused to join the army, arrested 1940 and executed 1940, so he was around 34 years old when they killed him. The place that he was arrested, we will visit later because it's just 5 minutes away where I lived. Where I live, not live, where I live today. But we know much more about Konrad. We know the story of Konrad.
Konrad Brzezek, born in the year 1903 in Rybnik, owned together with his wife a shop in Berlin selling soap. Both were active Jehovah's Witnesses, and they used that shop, that place, for meetings of Jehovah's Witnesses, especially for the group here in Friedrichshain. Both were several times arrested and sent to prison. On the 2nd of December 1941, Konrad Brzezek was called to join the army of the Nazis, which he of course refused, so he was arrested at that exactly same day. On June 6, 1942, Konrad Brzezek was murdered by the Nazis.
So Konrad, this is very interesting. The place he lives, called Friedrichshain. He's leading one of the group of Jehovah's Witnesses here in Friedrichshain. You see here on these pictures a lot of Nazis, but it was also a normal working class place. Why he was arrested, or what did he do for a job? He had a soap shop, and he was active, illegally active, because he kept recordings of Joseph Rutherford's talks in German in his soap shop. And that's why the Nazis came and take him to prison. So he and his wife have been for several months in prison. But they did not stop. After they get out of prison, they still were fighting against the Nazis. But then Konrad, on December 2nd, 1941, he was called up to the military service. But he said no. So that's why he was sentenced to death by the court. And after the verdict was confirmed, his wife, Erna Moos, who married again after the war, he wrote about him this: as a true Christian, he refused to get involved in the affairs of this world. On December 2nd, 1941, he was supposed to surrender. He went to the military district command and declared that he could not obey this request, as he considered the divine law to be the supreme law, and that is, thou shalt not kill. That's his wife here on this picture, Erna Moos. And Konrad did not want to kill anybody. So he got killed when he was 38 years old. The next stone is a very new stone. And I got the information about that stone very, in the last minute. We didn't knew about, because he was the only person as a Jehovah's Witness in the whole family. But yeah, we've been there and we watched how it really happens when a stone is put on the ground. So take a look. So the building you can see on the right side, this is where Paul lived. So the stone is really in front of the building. So I will get definitely someday more information about Paul, and then I will share these informations also with you in the future. We stay in the area and we know much more about Otto.
We are here at the Dannecker Street 6 in Berlin, Friedrichshain-Kreuzberg, where Otto Kurz lived. He was born in 1893 and he joined the First World War as a soldier. But from 1924, when he became a Jehovah's Witness, he changed his mind. He never wanted to join a war again. The Nazis persecuted him from the beginning. He was sent to the concentration camp in Sachsenhausen and different other prisons. But in the year 1944, the army called him to join the war again as a former soldier. He refused, and in December 1944, just a few months before the end of the Second World War, Otto Kurz was executed, murdered by the Nazis.
Again, I want to show with the pictures, it's a normal place. People had a normal life, enjoying sports, skiing, cycling, whatever, right? Normal people, hard-working people. And then the Nazis came and changed everything. Otto Kurz, as we heard, right? He left the church. He became a Jehovah's Witness. He hated war. He never want to be again a soldier, and he also was one of the group leaders at that time. One of 13 group leaders in Berlin that were also put in prison. He had also a storehouse of Jehovah's Witnesses, and he had so many books. So the court said that he was receiving illegal books for further distribution. An interesting thing is it's talking about 150 kilograms of books and brochures were confiscated from him. But interesting, I like this. The court says, in the main hearing, he declared that he could not give up his faith in Jehovah, but that he would not have the opportunity to continue working for the International Bible Student Association because he was too well known to the state police. So he was still fighting, but in the underground, right? The police knew him, but he did not stop to be a Jehovah's Witness. So they arrested him again. And in his case, after he received the call or the draft order to the army and he refused, that's when he was killed. I would like to, let's go back a little bit. Take a look. Take a look at the stone. Arrested July 17, 1944. Executed December 1944. When was the war over in Germany? In May 45. 8th of May. So 4 months and a few days. The Nazis already lost the war, right? There's no hope. It's over. And then they take a man who is 50 years old and he says no, and they execute him. You see the evil thing of the Nazis. Next one is Matthias Köhli, sorry. Matthias Köhli, also in his case, only what is written on the stone, no other information yet. He was 32 years old when he was executed by the Nazis. So it could be also that it was because of the army, but we don't have that information yet. But we have a lot of information of Gerhard Radatz.
We're here at the Verney Street 103. where the parents of Gerhard Radatz lived, who was an active member of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Gerhard Radatz was born in September 1910. He worked as a plumber, but also from the year 1933 he was active as a group overseer of the Jehovah's Witnesses here in Berlin. He, as many others, also refused to join the army of the Nazis. That's the reason why on the 30th of November 1940 he was sentenced to death by the Nazi trial, and on 14th of February 1941 he was executed and murdered by the Nazi regime.
So we have here also some pictures from Berlin, from that place where he lived, a castle. It was known for workers in the fields. It was there was an animal park there, vegetable gardens. Gerhard Radatz, when he became a Jehovah's Witness, he met his wife. He became a group servant, group leader of Jehovah's Witnesses in that area. And when he was arrested and put to prison, he got out of the prison and moved to the place where the stone is, Lichtenberg. During this time, his wife divorced. We will talk about that later, because there will be also another wife who also will say, I don't want to be a wife of that man anymore. I will explain this later a little bit more. And then again, also in his case, he was taken to the army and then executed in the age of 30 years old. And let's make a stop here. Let's make a break. Okay? Let's make a break. We are about the half. Take a coffee, tea, restroom, whatever is needed. 5 minutes? Is 5 minutes okay? Let's do 5 minutes. Enjoy the break, and we see us again in 5 minutes. See you in 5 minutes. So welcome back. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your break. And yeah, let's move on. So Werner Kerlekin.
We're here at the Kieferstrasse 21 in Berlin-Treptow. Here in that house lived Werner Kerlekin. Werner Kerlekin was a member of the Jehovah's Witnesses in Berlin, born in 1911. He got a really nice job. He was a piano builder. But as every Jehovah's Witness, he also refused to join the Nazi army to fight in the war. So on March the 13th, 1940, he was sentenced to death because of refusing fighting for them. Next day, April 1st, 1940, he was executed by the Nazi regime in Puławy, Poland.
So the place that Werner lived, Treptow, is known not only for the water and a lot of lakes, but also very known for producing a new radio that was called the People's Receiver. And that radio was very, very important for the Nazis. They made it cheap, so people could buy it. And thanks to that, the Nazis could use the radio as a propaganda machine and telling all the lies they want to tell them to the people. Werner was 28 years old when he was murdered. And I would like to read you the letter that he wrote on April 1st, 1940, to his mother and siblings. The pain of my death will certainly be great, but always wait a second. You got the letter, Fumiko? Okay, sorry. Okay, again. The pain of my death will certainly be great, or big, not great, will be big. But always know that the devil's principle is not to let anyone live who is faithful to Jehovah alone, but is against my resurrection. He is powerless. By then, he will be long since bound. At 3 o'clock, the devil will aim at me. There will be a bang. And you, dear mother, who brought up a boy, he will be dead by then. Otto Labs, also here, it's a special thing about his story. Yeah, please listen.
We are here at the street Höppnerstraße 4 in the Berlin district of Tempelhof. This is the place where Otto Labs lived. Born in the year 1887 in the eastern part of Germany, he moved to Berlin and worked as a tram driver. In the year 1937, he took part in the action Open Letter to inform the people in Germany about the cruel things the Nazis did. So 1 year later, in the year 1938, he was arrested and sent to the concentration camp of Sachsenhausen. 2 years later, the concentration camp of Dachau. And because of this hard work, in the year 1942, sent to the castle of Hartheim and murdered.
So the place is here in Berlin, very known for an airport. This is what you can see here. But what is so special about Otto Labs? He's the oldest There's another one who is the same age. So he's the oldest one who, when he died, 55 years old. An interesting thing is there's a lot of stories. Also, his wife divorced him after the arrest. And he was not really killed because he did not join the army. No. After being, he was taken to concentration camps because he was a Jehovah's Witness. And after being in different concentration camps, the Nazis said that he is sick, that he is unable to improve, that he is not not a healthy person that should live. So he became a part of the euthanasia program. That picture here, it's the castle of Hartheim. The euthanasia program is a very horrible thing where the Nazis also killed German people. But they were sick, mentally or physically disabled. And the Nazis said, we don't need them. And that was on the end the sentence of Otto Labs. So he was in prison because he was a Jehovah's Witness, but was killed because they destroyed him in these prisons so much and was disabled on the end. Next one is Max Krause.
We are here at the stumbling stone of Max Krause at the Tröchtlinger Straße 10 in Berlin-Schöneberg. Max Krause was born in the year 1900 in Gruszewo, Poland, and together with his wife Helena, he was an active member of the Jehovah's Witnesses. In the year 1941, the Nazis called him to join the army and join the war, which he, of course, refused. Unfortunately, on the 20th of June 1941, Max Krause was arrested. Also his wife, at the 2nd of September 1941, where she got the information that her husband will be executed because not joining the army. This happened on the 25th of October in 1941, when Max Krause was murdered by the Nazi government.
The place where Max is living was a place, let's say this, a little bit better. So it's not the working class that we visited, everything else. This is where people lived who got a little bit more money and not really rich, but better jobs. So it's a very beautiful place. They have nice gardens and so on, and back in the days and also today. But there's something very, very special that also want to talk about about Max Krause. And the special thing about Max Krause is his neighbor. I don't know I'm sure, I hope that all of you recognize him. That's Albert Einstein. And Max just lived around the corner to where Albert Einstein lived. Before Albert Einstein left Germany because he was a Jewish man and the Nazis wanted to kill him, so he left to America here, right? So I don't know, but I hope and I think that Max preached to him, right? Jehovah's Witnesses preach to their neighbors. So maybe Max also preached to Albert Einstein, and maybe he told him about a future, about a better future that will come. But Max, as we know, we have a lot of documents here. When he was 40 years old, he was executed because of his believings. Next one is Otto Reinhold Siegel.
Otto Reinhold Siegel was born in Saxony in Germany 1922. With just 19 years old, he moved in 1941 to Berlin, where he lived in the Hardenbergstraße 16 here in Charlottenburg, Berlin. He got in contact with Jehovah's Witnesses and joined them. This means that he also refused to join the army of the Nazis. He was sent to different prisons, and on the end, the Nazis murdered him in the prison in Königsberg on the 5th of June 1944, when he was just 21 years old.
So Otto is the second youngest one. Before that was Wilhelm, the youngest one. About Otto is also very interesting that he became a Jehovah's Witness as a young person in Berlin during the war, right? So he moved to Berlin in 1941, found a place to live, and then he became a Jehovah's Witness. So that's the interesting thing. During the persecution of the Nazis, somehow get in contact and became a witness. But the question is, what was the court? And you can see here, 1943, Militärgericht, military court. So this means that he was a soldier. And it was in Allenstein. Allenstein is in Far East Poland today. So this is the front line where the Nazis were fighting the Russians. And he was murdered in Königsberg. Königsberg today is Russia. So, wait, Otto was a soldier? Yes. Otto was or became a soldier. Why? What happened? We don't really know. We will talk about another person also a little bit more. What we know is that when he was in that prison, some other Jehovah's Witnesses wrote to their families and telling about Otto and calling him a brother. Maybe Otto, when he became a young person, a Jehovah's Witness, got afraid. And when they called him to the army and said, if you don't join, you die, maybe he was afraid and joined. But on the end, he refused again. Says, okay, I made a mistake. No, I will not fight for the war of the Nazis. It's an example of, yes, people make mistakes, but more important is who they are on the end. Did they really killed people? No, he never, as we know today. So that's why the military court decided to execute him in the age of 21. Oh, sorry. And the next story, Rudolf Augustin, is very similar. Yeah, please watch.
We're here at the stumbling stone of Rudolf Augustin at the Markgraf Albrecht Street 5 in Berlin, Charlottenburg. Rudolf Augustin was born in 1919 here in Berlin, and in the young age of 13 years old he moved out of the Protestant church in Berlin, and together with his father he started to study the Bible with the Bible Forscher, how the Jehovah's Witnesses were named at that time. Unfortunately, he was forced to join the Nazi army, which he of course refused. So he was sent to a trial and was sentenced to death. Under this pressure of this Nazi terror, he said that he will join the army. So they kept him in prison, and in that prison he got a sentence to join the war in Russia on the front line, just because they wanted him to kill. And that happened on July 1944. Rudolf Augustin died on the front line in Russia.
So they lived very close, right? The Jehovah's Witness who preached maybe to Albert Einstein, um, Otto, and also Rudolf. And again, here's the story, right? He went to war. He was young, he was afraid. He went to the army, he joined the army, but on the end, he said no. On the end, he said he will not do this. So the Nazis put him on the front line fighting the Russians. And in 2006, Russian documents about the War Graves Commission found a card that he was a prisoner taken by the Russians and died November 12, 1944 in Moshga in Russia. But there is no really saying why did he was killed or whatever. So that's why I still decided to put this stone here, even as you maybe see, it's not written on the stone that he was a Jehovah's Witness. On that stone, it's not saying that. Maybe because there are so many other informations what happened at the time. Why I still want to remember him. He is again an example of a person who wanted to be loyal, stumbled, made a mistake, joined the army, but on the end, Rudolf stayed loyal. He did not supported the Nazi army. He stayed loyal, and that's why also he was killed. Yeah, by the Nazis, right? He was killed by the Russians, but the Nazis sent him there to be murdered. Let's get to the last three stones of the Zeden and Schmidt family.
We're here at the Franzstraße 30 in the Berlin district of Spandau. Here at that place lived the family Zeden Schmidt. Richard and Amy Zeden, as Jehovah's Witnesses, raised their nephew Horst Schmidt as their son. All of them were very active Jehovah's Witnesses before the Nazis started to rule in Germany. The persecution of the Nazis hit them very hard. Richard and Amy were both arrested the same day, and Richard died in the concentration camp of Sachsenhausen, and Amy was executed in a prison. Horst was also arrested and sentenced to death. Why? Because he refused to join the army. He's one of only a few men who refused to join the army and survived. Thanks to this, why he could tell us his story.
So the place we are is called Spandau. It's in the most western part of Berlin. It was an own town and became a part of Berlin 100 years ago. So that town had everything that needed, right? All the factories, workers, lakes. Was normal town that worked and later became a part of Berlin. It is older than Berlin. That's interesting. It's older than Berlin. But also there, Adolf Hitler had his speeches of hate. But we don't want to talk about Adolf Hitler. We want to talk about Horst Schmidt. This is Horst Schmidt, and I had the great privilege to meet him when I was a young man, or boy, 14, 15 years old. And the stones that you just saw, this is where he lived. Where he lived. And he survived. So all the other stones that we talked about, all the other persons that we talked about, all of them died. Horst Schmidt survived. He wrote a book. Let's go back a second to that. I really recommend that book. Death Always Came on Mondays. I don't think it's in Japanese, but it's only in English and German. A fantastic, and Polish also. A very, 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 very good book, telling his own story, how he survived. He's talking about his mother, Amy Zeden. She has a different name than her son because he was adopted. He was adopted. His parents, didn't had problems. So this is basically his aunt, Amy, but he considered her as a mom, his mom, because he was adopted in 1923, so he was 3 years old. And we will now go to the place that I told you in the beginning. This is very, very close to my place, where she was executed. But the interesting thing is, the street that takes us to that prison is named after Horst Schmidt's mom, Amy Zeden Way. This is our sister. This is a Jehovah's Witness. We have a street named after a Jehovah's Witness here in Berlin. So if you come to Berlin, I will definitely show you that. Let's walk there. Let's take a look in that former prison. In the back, it's still a prison today, where dozens of Jehovah's Witnesses were executed, where so many people were executed. Why? Because they wanted not to support the Nazis. But all the time we talked about man, right? And now we have a woman. Why? In the Nazi army were only men allowed. There were no women. And all the reasons that we talked about, why these men were executed, because they did not join the army. So why Emit Seiden, a woman, a female Jehovah's Witness, was executed? Because she was hiding her son and two of his friends. So she was hiding three young men who did not wanted to join the army. And this was considered by the Nazis that he is fighting against the Nazis, that she is fighting against the German army. And that's why they took her also to prison and then executed her. The father of Horst Schmidt, Richard Seiden, Horst is writing about his father that he had no chance to survive. Why? Because Richard Seiden was a Jewish man who became a Jehovah's Witness. A Jewish Jehovah's Witness had no chance to survive the Nazis. So he died when he was 55 years old. Some sources say in Sachsenhausen, some in Auschwitz, but yeah, that's not important. Why I wanted to talk about these people? Why you saw different tours of mine, right? And maybe you realize that this tour is a little bit different. This video is a little bit different. It's very slow, right? I'm not rushing with words. I'm not telling hundreds of stories. I give you time to think. After every person, we commemorate them. Why we did this? Why I want to do that? Why I show that video? Because I think that these 17 people we talked about today, they showed what resistance can be. For some people, resistance means to take a gun and fight, to kill the ones they're fighting against. But Jehovah's Witnesses, they decided a different way of resistance, a peaceful way. They were fighting against the Nazis when they were telling the people the truth. When they went to the people and said, we have a better government. It's God's kingdom. Human should not rule over human. We know from the Bible that God will bring peace on earth. So please stop support the Nazis. Stop killing people like you do in that room. This is the room where Emit Seiden and almost 100 other Jehovah's Witnesses and hundreds other people also, right? Not only Jehovah's Witnesses, were murdered, were executed, were killed by the Nazis. So Jehovah's Witnesses had the resistance, or did the resistance, not only by talking to people, but resistance means also to say no. No, I will not vote for you. No, I will not support you. No, I will not join the army. No, I will not raise my hand and shout Heil Hitler. No, I will not have the flag. No to everything what you do. And this is what Jehovah's Witnesses did. They said no to the Nazis. And the consequence was that many of them died. And that's why I want to remember them. That's what I want people who maybe will watch this video on YouTube. And maybe they would think about these courageous men and one woman who said no. No to the Nazis. No to death. No to terror. So even if it was maybe a difficult video today, right? It's not like the other ones. I'm still very thankful that you joined, that you watched with me this, that you watched the whole thing, the 1.5 hours with me, that you took your time with me to remember them, to read the names, to listen about them, and maybe also to understand or to learn what resistance means. And that each of us, every person, every Jehovah's Witness in the world would do the same again. When people are doing bad stuff, bad things, when governments are forcing us to kill others, Jehovah's Witnesses say no, like these men and women. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for watching. I will now stop the streaming to YouTube. So if you're watching right now on YouTube live and you want to take part on the question answer section, please come back to Zoom. I think you know my Zoom login data. So thank you very much, everybody.